Killer Shoe presents.
I think most football playing kids have at some point in time dreamed of becoming a star player. We watched our heroes play and we watched them win. Most of us knew that the needle's eye we had to get through to realize that dream was very, very narrow. We needed another way to live out those football hero dreams of ours. Thankfully, the early days of gaming provided a few options for us to do so. Many of them were interesting attempts of questionable quality, like Striker, that used this innovative but odd windshield wiper mechanic for the chances, where the angle is really difficult to judge. Striker number 9 from Impressions was very ambitious with its 12 different minigames for training. Doing well in these minigames gains you chances in the next game, and failing takes chances away. The minigames are largely unplayable, and over the limited number of weeks I played in the game, I never managed to end on a plus and always had to rely on chance cards to be able to take part in matches. And every time I took part in a match, I wished I didn't have to. Others, like Professional Footballer, took an all-text approach to representing a football career. Despite the matches being just multiple choice questions, the process of working your way up from the reserves is strangely addicting and scoring goals oddly satisfying. The most well known of the early single-player footballer career games was Footballer of the Year. Footballer of the Year was released in 1986 by Gremlin Interactive. The Spectrum version was partly written by Chrysalis founders Sean Hollingsworth and Peter Harrap, who would go on to make some great footy games during the late 80s and early 90s. If you ever played this game, you will certainly remember the magnificent music. It was composed by one of the most iconic C64 composers, Ben Daglish. The list of C64 games scored by Mr. Daglish is too long for this video, but it includes classic compositions like the music for The Last Ninja, Gauntlet and Cobra. Unfortunately, Ben Daglish passed away in 2018, but I still regularly find myself humming the music to Footballer of the Year. The game itself lets you live the dream, even if it's in low resolution. You enter your name and you pick a division, and you start your career. The object of the game is to be named Footballer of the Year. To achieve your goal, you have to play well enough to move up the divisions and make an impact in the top division. You always play as a striker, and you have to bribe your opponents to get chances by using gold cards that can be worth between 1 and 3 chances. You start off with a number of gold cards, and more can be added by buying cards, which is increasingly expensive as you move up divisions. Or you can get gold cards by receiving them through random events. They are rather expensive, and in the early game, due to the mechanic of chance, they can be hard to come by. The chance mechanic is also a card buying affair. For a fixed price that doesn't change when you go up divisions, you can buy random events. There's also a slight chance that you're given a random event at the end of each game. The effects of these random events vary. Some are fixed, like the score a penalty to win $600 event, but some, like the gambling events, vary with division. The problem with this mechanic is that in the beginning of the game it can easily take you 3 weeks to save up for a gold card or a chance card, and just as you've saved up enough, a random event after a game can take all your money away. This can leave you without any gold cards for weeks on end in the first seasons. When you're in higher divisions though, you can game the mechanic by just buying chance cards and win lots of money with little risk of being completely destitute. You usually end up with around 30 gold cards on your account at any time during the later season. The events are very much random. If you're unlucky, you can get injured 3 weeks in a row. The most expensive event in the game but still play the games in between. You can, in theory, get married every week by pure chance, and this is also very expensive. This part of the game is not very well balanced, as you can see, but it's not insufferable. I view it simply as roulette and pay no mind to what the events actually are. There is another caveat with chance cards pertaining to transfers that we will explore shortly. So, how about the football you play? Well, there is exactly two scenarios that can occur. Either you're given the ball with a defender coming at you from either side. This is the easiest one to score from. Or you will be awarded a penalty. Penalties are much harder because the controls are very fiddly. You need to just nudge the joystick to get the ball next to the keeper but not wide. My advice is to pick a favorite side and always go there. After all, this is a budget footy game from 1986. It's not like there's machine learning AI. As we discussed, the goal is to move up the divisions. There are 5 divisions, Divisions 4 to Division 1, and then the European Super League. The Super League is separate. Your team can't be promoted to it from Division 1. If you're lucky, you can get your team promoted, but especially in the beginning it's easier to transfer up. Your player has a division-depending rating, ranging from average to excellent, and the rating determines which division will be interested in you. The Super League wants excellent players, and so forth. Yeah, the divisions buy you, and then you get to pick what team you play for. The PFA is strong in this one. Transfer chances come from 2 places, either really expensive transfer cards or for random events. Transfers from random events is a total crapshoot since you cannot turn down an offer. Some seasons you just randomly get transferred up and down the divisions. Eventually, if you play your cards right, you will end up in a top team with a busload of gold cards, and you will get to play the European Cup and UEFA Cup. You can actually play both of them in the same season in this game, and you can even play for your country, although there are no actual international competitions. Once you get to that level, it's just a matter of time until you win Footballer of the Year. Even though the game only drew lukewarm reviews, Footballer of the Year was a surprise hit for Gremlin and sold 400,000 copies. It was bound to have a sequel. The sequel was released in late 1989. The game is unfortunately less memorable. The bribe to score mechanic is more pronounced, and even though there are some improvements on the first game, such as the random factor being dialed down, it's just more of a mess to navigate. The new action sequences are a marked improvement from the first game, but they're still too easy after you've seen them a few times. All in all, the sequel was a huge disappointment to me when I first played it. Compared to the fast-paced and simple original, this sequel is a chore to play and quickly becomes tedious. The genre went more or less into hibernation after Footballer of the Year 2. There were some games that had elements of playing a football career, but in most it felt like tacked on afterthought. Anchor's Player Manager had the option of playing as one player, but you also had to manage, and you started at 28 years old. Chrysalis put out PFA Player of the Year, but it played more like a sandbox than a career game, where you not only had to manage the team you play for, but you could actually change the tactics of the opposing team. The player career part existed only because the game had a PFA license. By the turn of the century, the genre had flatlined with no hope in sight, but some of the old footy game fans had not given up hope. Some indie developers worked to bring the genre back. In late 2002, Andreas Osvalds released Andreas Osvalds Championship Soccer. It's a very ambitious project. Andreas took the soccer simulations he enjoyed and combined them into a huge interwoven football world. The management part reminds of Championship Manager 2, and the matches take inspiration from Sensi and Kick-Off. Andreas added enough new ideas for the game to feel like its own new thing, and incorporated things that you rarely see in other soccer simulations, like rounding the keeper to score. I found this game shortly after release and have been playing it for nearly 20 years on and off, and I very much enjoyed the community around the game. And for reasons of transparency, I have to say that after nearly 20 years of intermittently keeping in touch with countless discussions about football games, I consider Andreas a friend at this point. Despite its comparably simple graphics for the time, Championship Soccer is at the same time brutally realistic and uncompromising in its effort to recapture a game that takes skill and training to play. Computer managers will not favor you. If you do not perform, you will find yourself on the bench or in the stands. For this reason, the first part of your player career can be hard work until you manage to prove yourself and train your skills up. You need to really weigh every decision and every move you make in your career. You have to match your skills and the position you play with the offers you get. If you move up the divisions prematurely, you will end up on the bench and your development will suffer. Conversely, if you stay too long in lower divisions, your development curve will flatten and you will make no progress. The game allows the player to find their own style of play. The style of play you choose and the skills you focus on really have an impact on your performances and the clubs you should choose. I prefer to build speed and dribbling, and I need to find teams that play on the counter and use the spaces behind the defense. I usually do badly in a crowded area. Championship soccer rewards careful career management and good performance. With the no-nonsense approach of the AI managers, you will feel a real sense of accomplishment as you move up the division. When you play your first cup final, it feels like it means something, and scoring the winner in extra time just feels like you really accomplished something. Eventually, if you do well, you can get picked by your natural team and help them qualify for continental tournaments or the World Cup. At the time of release, it was a fairly unique game, and it drew praise from industry veterans like Mark Vaughan and Dino Dini. The development of a 3D sequel was started, and I played a few tech demos, but nothing eventually came of it back then. Only 1 year after it was released, it would come up against some stiff opposition in the form of New Star Soccer. New Star Soccer was created by Simon Reed in the first few years of the new millennium. The game initially took a different approach to the genre than Championship Soccer. The first New Star Soccer, released in 2003, and New Star Soccer 2, released the next year, used a text interface similar to Professional Footballer, where you decided actions from multiple choice options. I ran into some problems trying to make this video, as I could not find a way to consistently run New Star Soccer 3 and 4 to capture them, and I couldn't even find New Star Soccer 1 and 2. I tried running 3 and 4 through virtual machines and the PC emulator with no luck, until eventually, in desperation, I threw a Hail Mary and just installed them on Windows 11, and well, it worked. In late 05, New Star Soccer 3 came along with a new Sensi-style 2D match engine where you could control your player for the entire game, or at least the part your player played in. It came with an extensive database of leagues to choose from. What I always appreciated in New Star Soccer 3 was how playing in midfield worked. Sometimes it's hard for a game to judge the performance of a midfielder compared to, say, a striker. If a striker scores, good. If a defender keeps a clean sheet, good. Midfielders were harder to judge as a game mechanic, but in New Star Soccer 3 playing in midfield worked really well. New Star Soccer 3 was a big step forward for the series with the introduction of a graphical match engine, and Simon Reed had big plans for the fourth installment. New Star Soccer 4 had a 3D engine that plays pretty well. It might still be the best one-man 3D soccer engine ever created. It has a lot of the feel of New Star Soccer 3, only in 3D. Some of the tactical aspects of the engine are excellent, like the way defenders deal with long balls, but some are slightly lacking, such as the AI's inability to play into space. The general play is in many ways reminiscent of New Star Soccer 3, with the same basic functions. You earn skills by using them in-game, and you can both auto-pass and auto-shoot, or aim your shots and passes. The more you practice, the better auto-shot works, so if you work your shooting up a bit, it becomes more useful. At the start of your career, you're better off aiming manually. I like to start off in the lowest league in the country I start in. It's not as important to balance your career in New Star Soccer 4, as it is much more forgiving than Championship Soccer. Here it seems the simulation is more gamey and not as hardcore as in Andreas Oswald's Championship Soccer. The manager will play you over better players in a New Star Soccer to make the game more fun, I guess. Controls are pretty good, if a little sluggish, especially when your stats are low. Although not as hardcore, there's still a feeling of accomplishment when you score your first goal. I can even use my Championship Soccer tactic here to score goals. The thing that sets New Star Soccer apart has always been the off-field stuff. You can find a girlfriend, buy cars and houses, even go to the horse track to bet your money or gamble them away on blackjack at the casino. This part never interested me, but it's still good fun I guess if you find that stuff necessary. New Star Soccer 4 was a very ambitious project from the start, and I offered my help in creating the Swedish database, and I was also one of the beta testers. If you play this game now, even the 2010 version, you get to use my Swedish database from around 2005. As a one-man project, this game is very impressive. It boasts a lot of leagues and complex league systems, and it also boasts parallel divisions unlike Championship Soccer. Like Championship Soccer though, it has international and continental competitions. The original intention for the game was to have a management section after your career, but it was never realized before release, and the relatively poor sales meant it never materialized at all. The game was eventually released as freeware several years ago, and as I said, it's very playable in Windows 11 and it deserves a playthrough. The game was a commercial failure compared to the work put in. This was clear fairly soon after release. Mr. Reed at one point contemplated leaving the gaming business and getting a real job. He did rethink the idea of New Star Soccer though, and released a less complex game with New Star Soccer 5 that was once again in 2D, just like his venture into a pure action footy game called Sensational Soccer. It was never my cup of tea, and I almost never played New Star Soccer 5. After this he went mobile and had great success with the mobile version, with the usual addition of microtransactions. I understand the game had to take this route for Simon Reed to keep making games for a living, and the thrill of the reception the mobile version got, along with the accolades it received, kept Mr. Reed in the game.
And the BAFTA goes to New Star Soccer.
But I still miss the lofty ambitions of New Star Soccer 4, and most of all the ambition to make the best football game possible instead of the most profitable football game possible. Now don't get me wrong, the mobile version is fine. It's a good game and I've had a lot of fun with it. It's a fun gaming experience in its own right, but New Star Soccer 4 is still the better overall footy game if you're looking to simulate a footballing career. The big boys in the football genre had been focusing on team action or team management since the late 80s. The success of games like Championship Soccer and New Star Soccer made the dragons of the genre take notice. Electronic Arts and Konami realized there was a market for this kind of football player RPG style of game. FIFA added its Be a Pro mode in FIFA 08, and PES added the Become a Legend mode in PES 09. A similar mode called Fantasia had already been added to the Japan exclusive J-League Winning 11-07 Club Championship. The modes added to FIFA and PES were bare bones, not adding much to the genre. There were some innovations early on. I like the way the camera zooms in as you speed up in FIFA 11 for instance. PES had the mode up until PES 2021, but has since the game became eFootball abandoned most of the game modes, including Legend mode. In the earlier games I always liked the integrated scenes that made you feel like a part of the team, like training going on in the background, or updates from the manager, or post-game feedback from your teammates. On the pitch, PES felt more like football, like there was an actual game of football going on and you were in it rather than it revolving around you. In the latest versions, I enjoy playing defender using the player cam. The player camera could use a look over your shoulder button, but it works well enough to be an enjoyable experience. It doesn't work as well as a forward unless you like to make your runs blind. Some of the features in the early FIFA Be a Pro mode were broken, like starting your career as a left back and having the coach demand a hat-trick in your first game. All the way up until the versions in the last few years, you could get transferred 3 times on deadline day and end up in the club you started the day in. The coach will put you on in the 84th minute in your first game as a 16-year-old and ask you to get 8 of a 10 rating and score a goal and an assist. When you inevitably fail to do that in 6 minutes, the coach will disown you and put you up for transfer. You can also get selected for your natural team at 16 playing in League 1. In Championship Soccer it took me 7 seasons just to be included in the squad at the age of 23. The PES careers seem to me to take more reasonable routes, but still not as solid as Championship Soccer. The career mode in FIFA has been ignored by Electronic Arts for years, especially since they added FIFA Ultimate Team to the game, which has dwarfed the other modes in terms of developer focus. Electronic Arts has put all efforts into getting every young child to gamble, as the leaked presentation from a few years back tells us.
All prompting this insider to contact Go Public when he saw an internal EA document discussing FIFA Ultimate Team, the mode of play that features loot boxes. It says it's a cornerstone. We are doing everything we can to drive players there, and all roads lead there. Someone else is reading the insider's words.
It's getting harder and harder to defend what is very obviously unregulated gambling that's meant to capitalize on people who obviously don't understand what is happening.
Any sane entity, faced with even the remote possibility that their practices will hurt children, would of course back down and apologize, but not Electronic Arts.
Well, first, we don't call them loot boxes. I think that was...
Whatever term you wish to apply to them, do you consider them ethical?
So what we look at as surprise mechanics.
Surprise mechanics, right? Yeah, that's what drug dealers tell their clients about bad drugs. In the short time I spent with FIFA 23, I did sense a small improvement though. The goals set by the manager were more reasonable, and the player progression felt more solid. This being said, in the game you're watching I had to score a hat-trick just to meet one of my goals, and I still failed to meet all of my goals, as I didn't score from outside the box, as a 16-year-old in my first cup start. Even on world class, you can easily score a hat-trick every game, which makes the game pretty boring in the long run. When playing this on professional, it's a very silly game. As long as Electronic Arts are allowed to continue the gambling for children racket that is FIFA Ultimate Team, I have no hope for any major improvement in the career modes. There might be hope on the horizon for us player career fans though, as Andreas Osvalds has hinted on Championship Soccer making a comeback.